Personally, I love working with new teachers, mentor teachers, because this is my 13th year in education. And one thing that I think has been my hallmark is that I love to grow. I never like to stay stagnant. I love to try new things and do different things. And that's the opportunity that I know you kind of let in. I kind of eavesdropped a little bit, but that's what kind of got us on the same page is our growth. And so I'm at Jones Middle School this year in Aldine ISD. This is my second year there, and I don't think I'd be anywhere else right now. I love my position. I love my job. I love the students I work with, and I love my team. Great team. So.
Yeah, and the one thing I forgot to mention, I teach at a charter school in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. That's called Seven Hills Prep Academy. This is my first year there. I teach 8th grade geography. So it's been a different experience being a public school teacher for the first 9 years of my career. Now moving to the charter setting. There's a lot of things that are different, but all in all, teaching kids is teaching kids.
And one thing that I wanted to, like, the two of us, the fact that we're presenting on the same thing, it's really like the tale of two cities. Did you tell them about that?
I did not mention that. Okay. That's a good. I forgot that.
I was not an education major. I didn't know what pedagogy was when they put me in the classroom. I thought they were saying a bad word. He, on the other hand, went to school to be a social studies geography teacher.
Yep, sure.
That's all he wanted to do. This was my third career choice. So it was not like I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a lifelong educator. It was I was a sociology major. And so I tell people I learned people before I learned pedagogy, which I think gives me a little bit of an advantage in the classroom because you deal with people. Little people sometimes, but people. So our two tales are totally opposite, but led us to the exact same conclusion that if you apply an intentional approach to what you want to do with yourself, not anybody else, you'll actually get the results you want.
All right, so today's objective, the learner will be able to identify their teaching needs, select the correct podcast community to meet their needs, and how to document the evidence of their learning. With that, even just putting this together, because a part of what we put together is a few of the podcasts that we've listened to, you can get lost in the weeds so quickly on Apple Podcasts or iHeartradio looking for podcasts. So we want to make sure that through this presentation, we're helping you really narrow down the niche that you can find, because the greatest thing about podcasts is it's so niche. You can literally find a community, because that's what podcasts really are. They're communities on literally anything. But we want to make sure that while you're doing this, we're helping you get in the right direction to make sure that this is not something that you just listen to, that this is really meaningful PD. All right, so hopefully on your screen, a poll came up that's asking you, how long is your daily commute round trip? So to work and back, how long is your average time that you spend on the road?
And I have to throw in this here right now because I just had the realization that my commute at work is literally about 10 minutes round trip from my home to my school. That's getting from my door to my classroom and back home. So I have a little different scenario than most people.
Okay, so it's looking like, I'm a little surprised. I thought there would be a few more people commuting a little farther. But it looks like over half of the people in here are driving 20 minutes to work and 20 minutes home. We have a few people that are driving 10 to 20, and a few people that are, just by show of hands, where are people that it's more than an hour? That's me. Where I live in the Twin Cities, it's 35 minutes down and can be anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour home. You know, and this coming back to our story of teammates, when I was struggling from my transition from 8th grade and all the way into 6th grade, that was one of the questions he asked me is, what are you doing with your commute? And at the time we were only primarily listening to audiobooks and we were sharing audiobooks. But then we both really got into the podcast at about the same time because we were just bouncing ideas off each other. And we know, and we'll go into this a little later, that time, without a doubt, as an educator and as a person, is your most valuable asset. And if we can take that time that we use for other things and direct it to our PE, it can be a game changer. We don't want to. We don't need to. So, in coming off that prior question, during your commute, how do you use your time? And this is a response kind of like a Twitter. You got 250 characters. Yeah. Yes. So as we look at this, we don't want to diminish any of the things we're doing. So please do not take us as saying that you're not using your time well right now. That's 100% not.
Right, because I can be honest with you, I don't listen to podcasts every morning. There are mornings that I need to hear something else, and I'll need to crank up some music real loud on my commute to school and get my mind in a good place before I get there. So it's just a way that we can know that there is a way that we can gain PD for ourselves that we can actually document and use toward our whatever your evaluation system is. And what we did before, when we first started putting this presentation together, I went and talked with principals and assistant principals to find out what would be suitable for a teacher to turn in and submit to you to show you evidence of PD that they did outside of the norm. You know, because we know the traditional, oh, let's go to staff development. The district says you have to go, you teach history, you have to go sit in this history professional development. But we found that sometimes most people don't like to do those things. Or you may have been teaching for 10 years and you've heard the same thing for the last 10 years. And you want something fresh. And so I'm jumping ahead in the presentation. But again, so it just kind of depends on, it's showing you how you can actually use a little bit of time, document that time that you're doing, and actually be able to present that to your administrator as this is what I did for you. So are there any questions up to this point about anything? Comments?
You're sharing that feedback that you got from the principals.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Actually, when we developed this, we didn't develop it, and we were going to present it a while back, but we didn't get enough information from the principal. Because that is the big thing. Is people like, well, my school's not going to accept it. So again, when we asked, what would you accept? And they gave feedback. Their whole big thing was, what's the evidence that you've actually done? So that's what we tried to provide.
And we think, at least where I teach now and where I've taught, a lot more schools seem to be going more in that autonomous directions where if you're reading a book or you're listening to a book, they really are accepting a lot more forms than what they are. I mean, I think when we're talking about the time thing, I think the frustration for all of us is, especially, at least for me, was when you taught all week and then 7:30 on a Saturday morning when you don't want to be doing that. That's the only time you really got. was to give up Saturdays or give up your summer. And we want to be able to provide a way for you to not replace all of that, but replace some of it.
All right. Do you listen to podcasts? This is just a quick poll. Go ahead and just put that up right now. I think we saw a lot of it. Some people do listen to podcasts already. For those who listen to podcasts, what's one that you listen to?
EduTech guys.
EduTech.
Mm-hmm.
I was with them last year.
Cult of Pedagogy.
Cult of Pedagogy.
Yeah,
Jennifer
pedagogy,
Gonzalez,
yeah.
Hers is super good.
And then the 10-minute teacher podcast or Angela Watson. I can't think of the name of it.
What are you listening to podcasts that are outside of the teaching?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about those too. That's important. Yes.
So my name's Box of Oddities, House of Works. Like
Box
yeah,
of Oddities is probably the top right now. Box of Oddities.
TED Talks, Box of Oddities. It's
TED
TED
Talks
super
daily.
solid conversation.
I listen to
You learn all kinds of
Twins,
weird things.
Triangulation, and Not Hackable. They changed the name. So they're
Right.
Sometimes crying.
And then Enneagram journey stuff. Lots of Enneagram stuff.
It's a really funny one called Grown Ups Read Things They Wrote as Kids. That one's hilarious.
I'm surprised no one in
things
the
they wrote
teacher
as
space
kids.
said cereal.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Cereal
Cereal,
is the
Dr.
one
Jack.
we always hear
Yes.
about people
Or,
doing cereals like the
Zach Shepard.
Oh,
Armchair Expert.
Yeah, Armchair.
Dax Shepard's is
Yeah.
really good.
30.
And a lot of, especially like the Dax Shepard one, I think that's where we started was when you were just listening to people tell their story.
Yeah.
I think that there's something really important about it.
The mom.
Oh yeah, that is.
So looking at it,
Majority. All right, so this is one of the terms that we came up with. It's PD on your own terms. I say this even in my classroom. Nobody likes to be told what to do, right? So how do you get from not being told what to do? Is you find out what it is that you need to do and you do those things. I don't feel like anybody tells me to do anything. I just know there are things that I need to do and I get it done. We don't do that with our PD usually. Our PD is usually somebody telling you you have to take this and you go do it. And one of our biggest complaints of professional development is that there's not enough time. It's not relevant. Heard it all before, and it's selected for you. I know as a math teacher, for a while we had to sit in Region 4. Nothing against Region 4. I think Region 4 is an amazing resource. But every single year, matter of fact, it was every 9 weeks. Every quarter we had to sit with Region 4, going over some of the same materials that we've done year after year after year. They may spice it up with a different name, but it's the exact same activity. And as a teacher, you would kind of get stagnant because you'll think that your classroom is just your content. And we know that there's so much more that goes into our classroom than just the content we bring in. I think it was James Comier said you cannot have any significant learning without a significant relationship. You have to start with that relationship. Podcasts and PDing on your own terms gives you an opportunity to know yourself. So some of the things that we can do to go through this is to think about if there's not enough time, PDing on your own terms will give you that time back. You say it's not relevant, you choose the podcast you want to listen to. You choose the people you want to listen to. And the big part is not just listening to it. In the beginning, that's all we were doing, listening. And we were kind of our own reflective tool to kind of bounce ideas off of each other. But then when he left, I had to realize that what am I doing with the information? So then I had to start writing the information down. What am I doing with this information that I'm getting to make it relevant? Heard it all before? Podcast gives you fresh ideas. I love, we host our own podcast, and the greatest thing that I love is we've interviewed over 100 teachers around the world. And to hear every teacher's story that is different. Every teacher has a story of what made them great, what made them want to get into the profession. Who was their favorite teacher? I guarantee if we raise a hand and ask everyone in this room right now, who was your favorite teacher and why? No one would say it was Mr. James because he was such a great science teacher.
I really enjoyed those equations and geometry.
They won't say that. They're gonna say things like, "Man, they changed my life." You're gonna say something like, "They made me feel special," or "Every morning they made me smile." You know, and so those are things that we can't really get when we're going to a district staff development because most districts, unfortunately, don't invest in relationships. They invest in rigor. They're gonna make sure that the tests are rigorous.
What do you call it? The little R.
The little
the forgotten
the
R.
forgotten art. Because we focus on rigor, we focus on making it relevant to our student body, but we don't focus on how we building those relationships with those students. And that does not come until you know who you are.
And to this point, the whole genesis of why we've been friends 6 years, I'm getting married this fall, he's gonna be my best man, is because he saw what I needed before I did. I didn't need more rigor. I didn't need more relevance. I needed to get a relationship with myself because I had gotten so caught up in I'm this kind of teacher. When my first job kind of went south, so did my whole perspective on myself. And that's where it started. Choosing what you need is what you need. If a teacher needs financial help, go listen to Dave Ramsey's podcast. That's and we can't undermine things like that because as much as we want to say I'm siloed in these four walls and what happens to me outside does not come in here, we know that's not true for the kids and we know it's not true for ourselves. And the other thing with it, choosing what you need that I want to really reiterate too, there have been podcasts that I've listened to like 6 times in a row. Not like different, like the same episode, because there's so many times where you get into one thing and you can dive deep and you can really dig in.
I listened to Earl Nightingale. I know that's aging me. I was not around when he was around, but Earl Nightingale, I listened to Earl Nightingale literally every single day for 45 days straight. Every single morning. That was the only thing I would listen to. My daughter even this summer was like, "Daddy, you know you listen to this every morning?" "Yes, I do." And then but I started noticing that she would say some of the things that he would say about different things. Why? Because again, what you put into your body, what you put into your psyche, what you put into your mind is what's going to be projected. And if we're worried and stressed, we're going to project worry and stress. If we're trying to figure out how we're going to deal with the troubled student, then guess what? When we go in the classroom, the troubled student becomes what's projected. So we have to realize that when we shift it and do PD on our own terms, again, we get to know ourselves and we get to catch that before it gets to that point.
Well, and when we're on that too, with the commute, that particular situation, we used to work with people or ran into people that when you asked them that question, they were listening to like morning talk radio where the radio was calling up some guy to ask why the date didn't go well with some girl, and it always devolves into drama. And they listen to that on their way to school, and they wonder why drama follows them. It doesn't follow them. The same with that, they're looking for it.
So, how do we do that? So,
we did
not bring it up. So, what I want you to do right now, you've got the note cards at home. Think about it, your greatest accomplishment from last year. Not something that someone said about you, something that you say is your greatest accomplishment. And then think about what was your weakest area for last year. Think about those two things. We'll give you a few moments.
And if you have a space where you can write it down, I mean, that's
Yeah, I would too.
And
sticky notes?
Oh, there is a note. You're good spot. There is a note section in your pod, so you can write it in there. But
You won't see it.
But just to.
And it's really not for us to see.
Oh yeah, that was the question.
It's not for us to see. This is a personal reflection. Because before you can start diving into saying what podcast am I going to listen to, you got to first dive into who you are and what emptiness you need to feel. What void do you have? what was your strongest points. I'm a firm believer in strength finders. If I know I'm good at something, I'm going to keep going at it. I'm going to maximize myself at what I know I'm good at. And then in hopes that in my areas that are weak, they'll kind of get picked up. But that does not become my focal point. Because if I'm always focused on the areas that I'm weak in, then I'm always disappointed. But if I keep building myself on those areas that I'm good in, pretty soon I hate emails. I'm just praying that one day I'll become so big that I'll have a personal assistant and I'll say, hey, Mr. Law, such and such just emailed you. Thank you very much. Can you email them and tell them this for me? I'm just business. I mean, people who know me know text messages and emails I'm very bad about. Very, very, very bad about.
Really?
I respond better in social media than I do through my email. But think about that for a moment. We'll give you just a few more moments. Think about it. Again, in the notes section, if you're in the nearby, you can just kind of jot those things down. Because I want you to be able to take it with you so that you can start knowing what it is that you need to focus on. You know, I know that finances was a struggle, so I started listening to Dave Ramsey. Because again, that's an area that I know we need to get better in.
Right.
So let me listen to, Napoleon Hill. Let me find that Napoleon Hill book so I can find out what's really going on. How does money work? How does money behave? People say it's not about money, but this building wouldn't be here without money. You wouldn't be here without money.
You know, and in this point too, like me staying present with my kids is a really big struggle. Like, because if I'm talking to this kid, I can get so locked in that there can be four hands over here and I don't know. So being present with this kid doesn't mean that I can't be present with others. So I listen to podcasts that are more meditation based to where I can do whatever I can to slow down. So that is by far my weakest area. And he's laughing because he knows what it's like to go places with me. Because I really struggle to be present even in a not very crowded restaurant. But I know that is my 100% weakness.
All right, so everybody have their personal reflections? All right. So now, we're going to jump into podcast selection. And the biggest thing about it is, again, we said it's hard. I promise you, I typed in education podcast. The first time we did it in iHeartradio, there were very few. So then you had to kind of tag it and say, okay, what are you looking for? Secondary education, elementary education. And once you start being specific, you get this whole host of podcasts. And again, for someone who's trying to get into it, it's a little daunting. So,
well, especially too, and if you're on Apple, if you go to the education category, it's not K-12 education. It's anything that can somehow be classified as education.
Anything they tag as education.
Anything they tag as education. So we're going to show you our website that we've got a hub that are a few podcasts of people who are friends in the education space, and then people who are outside. But one of the easiest things to do is once you find an education podcast, click on it, and it will always give you suggestions. And you just kind of snowball it until you find some things that you like. So in thinking about this and this question, if you got your idea of how you want to grow, then this is what we have for you. And this is really, for us, it's just a beta. So this is the logo for our podcast. If you go to our website and you click this very page, if you clicked on our faces, it would take you to our podcast. It is a shameless plug, but
okay.
We say about a dog that won't wag his own tail.
Or the won't wag his own tail.
So, but I'm not sure. Will that scroll down?
No, because they had it on there.
Oh, okay. So when you scroll down, there are two sections. Oh, there you go. Nice. So, right by Wilkie's hand, there is a PD documentation form. It's the form that, with the feedback from those administrators, we put together that we think you could take to just about any administrator and have them approve it. So it's a PDF that you can download. We are going to work on one that you can type right in.
Electronically. And so hopefully we want to get feedback. So use the form if you see something. Again,
Right.
This is a beta testing for us using this. This is from all the feedback. And what you can do is once you do it, eventually we're going to have this in a form to where you can just, you'll click on it, you'll make a copy of a Google form. That way you have a running record of it. You don't have to keep printing out these forms.
Right.
But we wanted to make sure that the nuts and bolts of what's going to be is going to be. So I'm going to have an amazing wife who's really good with Excel.
Yeah.
So we're going to have her create an Excel sheet for us.
You hear that?
I'll let her know when we get home. But again, what the principal is saying is they want to know what is it. So we wrote on here, name of the podcast, who were the hosts and who were the guests, description of the episode or the series. So you're just writing a brief description. And most podcasts give you that.
Mm-hmm.
They give you a description of what each one is. Next, what was the reason for you choosing this podcast and what's the rationale? What is it that you're doing? Because again, we can look at our evaluations every single year, and we can say, you need to focus on, classroom management. That's one big thing. You need to focus on differentiated instruction. But what do you say you need to work on? What do you say? Not someone else. What do you know that you need? Because I guarantee you a lot of other things could be fixed if you fix one or two things. Talk about,
And Violet?
who?
Sorry.
I can't think of it.
Okay. And the other thing too that we really want to emphasize as a part of this process is the very last part, the post implementation reflection. Because I felt like in my PD experience, that was what was always missing. Is I never had the time with a particular set of principles or strategies to be able to really implement it over time and then have the time to reflect and get better. And we think reflection is grade A1, the most important habit a teacher can get into. And whether it's journaling or a video series or taking notes or whatever it is, I mean, our podcast is really just, honestly, it started as our reflection on our practice. Because like I said, when Wilkie and I started working together, that was what was missing. It had been so long since I had really reflected on myself and my practice that I had no idea what was really going on. And he just steadily helped me get a clearer view of who I was and who I wanted to be.
And one thing, every administrator that we talked to said that this was the most important piece that they wanted to see. What did you do with that information? I know my principal is very cutting edge. He's very much outside of the box thinking. When I approached him, the first thing he said was, I want to know how to bring it to the classroom and what they found out about it. And so I love getting evaluated. When people come into my classroom and say, do you want to talk to me afterwards? Absolutely. And then the first question that they're going to ask you is, how do you think your lesson went? Because I'm doing this consistently, I'm going to run down everything, and I'm probably going to see everything that you saw, and I'm going to be a lot harsher on myself because I know the expectation that I set for myself. And I think that certain PDs can have you stagnant to think, I delivered the content. They didn't learn. That's one of the things that I don't understand. Because when my kids don't learn, then what did I not do? And I know that that's different because most people are like, no, it's the students. No, it's the teachers. It's us. And we have to understand what is our real role in doing it. It's not, I tell kids all the time, I can't force you to learn. If I have two dogs. If I took my dogs outside and I wanted to make them drink water, if I stuck their head in their water bucket, I'll drown them. All I can do is present the water to them. And if they're thirsty, they'll drink. So our jobs as educators is to present the information to them in such a way that they want to consume. I'm not Ron Clark. I'm not going to stand on top of a table. I'm actually kind of scared. I'm clumsy. I will be the one to fall. And they won't claim workers' company. You shouldn't have been on the desk. So that's not me, But I've literally watched Ron literally walk from desk to desk, table to table, jump. Not me. Not what I would do. But I will try to find out what ways. For me, I like to rap. So I may put a hip hop track on and rap with my kids while they're walking in the classroom, just to get their minds engaged when they walk in. So when I say I need your attention, I'm already happy.
Well, and I think a greater point, especially for our newer teachers that are coming in, is they see the wrong person because they live in a digital world where everybody's showing their best. And there are teachers that are spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on technology and equipment and room transformations. And that's all great if that's their thing. But I think there are a lot of people who are doing that because they think that's who they should be. And that personal reflection piece, and especially, Wilkie coined the term PD on your own terms. I'm way more committed to PD on my own terms with one or two accountability partners. I have an accountability partner that 100%, when I don't do things I should, reminds me that I didn't do what I should and didn't live up to the values that I set. And whether we think about it or not, when you project that, when you have that inside, that you are self-accountable and you have accountability partners and you really model it, is there more important things that we can model for our kids?
And again, we think about, we're trying to produce lifelong learners. If we're not, then how can we produce it? If we're the mold that's supposed to create the mold that says, come in here, you're going to become a lifelong learner. If we're not, then what are we really molding our kids into? We're molding them into kids who worry a lot, kids who have issues with their friends and don't know how to resolve them, because you see that in schools all the time. Teachers who have issues with teachers, and students know. And again, I see some heads nodding like, yeah, okay. It lets me know that it's not just in our campus or in our district, it's everywhere. It is a certain air that we give off that we have to shift the narrative. We're the only ones. I tell people revolution starts at the bottom, and teachers, we are the bottom. And when we start doing things like PDing on our own terms, growing ourselves, you may get some pushback from some colleagues, some colleagues have extra. They say, it doesn't take all of that. But guess what? To me, it does. Because I know that one kid, I got a text message from one of our counselors who visited the new high school, Carver High School.
Carver, yeah.
Performing arts. And that was one of my students I had 6 years ago. She took a picture with him and said, he says you changed his life. Not I taught him great math. Not I got him ready for 9th grade. I changed his life. That means the trajectory that he was on, I made it even a millisecond of emotion to make him change to go in a different direction than what he could have. Coming from the inner city, coming from a broken home, not having this, but someone cared enough to shift that momentum. And now he's going on to do bigger and better things. Why? Not because of the math, not because of the ELA, not because of the social studies teacher, but simply because of the relationship that was formed in the classroom. And I tell everybody, relationships start number one with you. If I'm not in a good relationship with myself, I cannot be in good standing with anybody else.
Okay,
So,
we definitely want to wrap up because I know we got to be respectful of your time. But
Can you scroll that up one more time? A little farther to the form, because we want to point this out to you. So as you're going forward and you're listening to podcasts, the one thing you could do for us that would really be meaningful is if you're listening to a podcast that you think is beneficial and other teachers need to hear, could you please fill out this form and send it to us? Because we want this website to become a Rolodex of resources for teachers. And we are at times very narrow-minded. I'm looking at the podcasts that we listen to, primarily men. Our experience is not diverse, but the more diverse experiences we get from people, the bigger we can build this. and we can provide that resources to teachers that is meaningful. So, do you want to go back to the new slide? All right, so you just saw that. That's our documentation form, so you could click on that too. Otherwise, you can go to that. It's the ledproject.com/hub. And finally, to wrap up, are there any questions we can answer for you in the few minutes that we have, point you in the right direction? Yes.
I'm the lead mentor for new teachers this year, and it's my first year doing it. And there's a ton of things that I have to do with these. They have to do a ton of things with me, with their curriculum, with their administrators, with their teams, and all over the place. So is there maybe a podcast that you would recommend to maybe help their first year of teaching go a little smoother? Maybe something on classroom management or on time management, stress management, something like that.
Well,
Something like that.
shamelessly, we will plug our own because we have 200 episodes. And we have done it primarily before then. We found people we respected and liked and interviewed them about what they're good at. On this, I would probably start with Teach Better Talk is one, and then I would probably then go to Dr. Woodley, Teach Also Inspire, would be one, and then right at the top, the Gray Area podcast is our friend Gary, and he has a really interesting perspective. He taught in Singapore and now is teaching in the Philippines. But for that particular part especially,
I think for new brand new teachers, Teach Better Talk or Value Adds Value.
yes.
And again, because like I say, most of these people we've interviewed already. So they're telling their stories. And again, how does information get transferred through storytelling? And when you have teachers who have a set, most of these have a set platform and they're interviewing people. I know Dr. Woodley, he interviews everybody from anybody in the education space.
Yes.
From new teachers to veteran teachers.
Did I miss what the name of your podcast was? Is it at the top?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Value Adds Value.
Yes. Yeah.
What platform? I just thought you used to.
You can find us on iHeartradio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Podbean, pretty much anyone that's out there. You can find us.
Most of the platforms.
Yeah.
Or you can go straight to our website.
Yeah, or it's posted on our website too.
Questions?
Any other questions? Otherwise, do you want to click back to the presentation? You can find us on primarily Instagram and Twitter at Value Adds Value. That's our combined, and then Wilkie's got his own that he does his teaching through. Otherwise, please feel free to email us, but maybe they shouldn't email us. Maybe they shouldn't email us because we're bad about checking our email. honestly, what? Yes, you do check yours, but honestly, the easiest.
With my LED project.
Yeah, so I check my LED project email a little more frequently than Wilkie does, but Instagram and Twitter is a really good place to find us and just send messages. And it's really easy for us to share things with you on there, especially because we can just forward you messages and places like that. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything we can do for you today?
I think this is important though, because I do feel like as an educator, I do get stuck and I start doing a lot of the worksheet thing and I'm just trying to get through the day. And I can tell because I can literally see the light out of my students' eyes. So I do think this is important to and it is hard to stay focused or, make something more exciting. Maybe health science. Which is a lot of fun because I always want to know about stuff, but it can be difficult. So I think this is actually, I've only been doing it 5 years. This is my 5th year, so I'm the second year. And this has probably been the biggest thing is keeping and looking at different stuff.
And that's why we have that separate section of those things. I mean, and just to give you a few background on this, Like Lewis House, the School of Greatness, is probably the one we both started with. It's phenomenal. If you want motivation and you're into like raw in your face motivation, the Jocko podcast.
He's hard for me. I'm like, I listen
Yeah,
to
he's
him
hard.
and I'm like, he's a
But,
little much, a little sometimes.
I think the one that I've really been getting into is we both talk about Super Soul Conversation as Oprah's.
Yeah,
But Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose for that
Oh,
particular one
actually.
is super good. And like I said, these are just the
Yeah.
ones that we are familiar with, and the teacher ones are people that we're friends with.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want to put a lot of them. We didn't want to put anything up here that we haven't checked ourselves.
Right,
Yeah,
and we did not.
Yeah.
So if you have one that's great, suggest it to us so we can review it and then we can add it to it. Again, we want to make it to where this site becomes the hub and it just gets filled up. And we have more sections and more things become more specific, math related. I know I follow one on iHeartradio, Math Magic, where they kind of introduce the idea of magic and mathematics together. So just anything that you can do to help us add value to teachers who are coming into the crowd, we greatly appreciate that. And thank you for sitting in to our session.
Thank you very much. Me too. Yeah.
Keep it both.
We're gonna have you do this. Once I like to be a little bit involved here. You know what I mean?
Stickers.
And you don't need any. Like you
No.
got
Get
your
your stickers.
Yeah, you don't do
Thinking of payday.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Oh,
You
I-
happen to have
I love it.
We need to get one of those. Could we borrow some in our future? I'll put you back when I get some. Thanks, please. Thanks.
Thank
You want mouse with cookies? She asked for last.
Please.
Now, if I want to start my own podcast or share, that's kind of like
That would have driven me crazy.
get it going. You know, you,
You know,
okay, because I'm
and I will
being,
work with you.
Actually,
So
walk back here. I can show my.
it's super sweet. So we recorded our entire presentation right on here. This is Zoom. So